Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're taking a deep dive into pneumonia. It's one of those infections that's incredibly common, but it can also be incredibly serious, turning our very own lungs into a microscopic battleground. Just look at that contrast. You've got a healthy, clear lung on one side, and then one that's under full-blown attack on the other. So how in the world does this happen? Well, in this explainer, we're going to investigate that whole process, right from the first breach of our defenses to the chaos that follows inside. So that's the big question, isn't it? How do these tiny invaders get past our body's amazing security system? And once they're in, what does that crime scene inside our lungs actually look like? Let's find out.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty, you need to understand the stakes here. This isn't just a bad cold we're talking about. According to the source material, lung infections like pneumonia are responsible for a shocking 2.3% of all deaths in the United States. It's a really serious public health issue.
Okay, so what is pneumonia, technically speaking? Well, it's an infection of the lung's core tissue. See those tiny air sacs, the alveoli? They're supposed to be filled with air, right? That's how we breathe. But with pneumonia, they get filled up with this inflammatory gunk, basically fluid and cells. And that's the real danger, because when they're full of that stuff, there's no room for air, and you can't get the oxygen you need.
To really get how an infection can take hold, you first have to appreciate how well our bodies are built to stop it. I want you to think of your lungs less like organs and more like a heavily defended fortress with layer after layer of security.
And check out this security system. First up, you've got the cough reflex. It's like a powerful eject button. Then there's the mucociliary apparatus. This thing is brilliant. It's like a microscopic escalator coated in sticky mucus that's always moving junk up and out. And for anything that still gets past all that, you've got the alveolar macrophages. These are your cellular security guards that literally hunt down and eat any invaders. It's an absolutely incredible system. But, even the strongest fortress has its weaknesses. And sometimes the very things that affect our overall health can punch a hole in those lung defenses. So how do those walls come down?
Well, it turns out the vulnerabilities are pretty specific. Something like anesthesia can temporarily knock out that all-important cough reflex. We all know cigarette smoke is bad, but what it does is it paralyzes that cleaning escalator, the mucociliary apparatus. And alcohol? It can actually slow down those macrophage security guards. And of course, any long-term illness can weaken the whole immune system.
So here's the bottom line. When any one of those defenses is weakened, a door just swings wide open. That vulnerability is the exact opportunity that pathogens are waiting for to get a foothold deep inside the lungs and kick off an infection. All right, the fortress has been breached. So who are the invaders that come rushing in? It's time to meet the rogues gallery, the microorganisms that are actually responsible for causing pneumonia. This is the question for any doctor trying to treat a patient. You've got to know who the bad guy is before you can choose the right weapon to fight them.
And what's really interesting is that doctors start their detective work by asking a simple question. Where did you get sick? They call this the clinical setting. Just knowing if someone got pneumonia out in the community versus, say, in a hospital can dramatically shrink the list of likely suspects.
So if we look at community-acquired pneumonia, that's the kind most of us are likely to encounter. There's a definite most wanted list. The #1 bacterial culprit, by a long shot, is Streptococcus pneumoniae. And on the viral side of things, influenza A and B are huge players, often setting the stage for pneumonia to develop.
And since the flu virus is such a key character in the story, it helps to know its playbook. It's basically a master of disguise. It evolves in two main ways. Antigenic drift, think of that as small tweaks to its costume each year, which is why we have a seasonal flu. But antigenic shift, that's the big one. That's a total genetic remix that creates a brand new virus, one our immune systems have never seen. And that's what can cause a pandemic.
Okay, we've figured out how the bad guys get in, and we know who they are. Now it's time to examine the evidence. We're going inside the infected lung to see what this infection actually physically looks like.
Bacterial pneumonia doesn't just look one way. It usually shows up in one of two main patterns. The first is called bronchopneumonia, which looks like patchy spots of infection scattered around. The second is lobar pneumonia, and that's a much bigger deal. It's when an entire section, or lobe of the lung, becomes infected.
And you can really see the difference here. On the left, that's bronchopneumonia. See those scattered, inflamed areas. But now look at the right. That's lobar pneumonia. Notice how that entire section of the lung is dense and solid? It's a complete hostile takeover of that part of the lung.
That widespread lobar pneumonia doesn't just happen instantly.
The body's response to that kind of invasion follows a really clear timeline, and it progresses through 4 very distinct stages.
So let's walk through that timeline. It all starts with stage 1, congestion, where the lung gets heavy and bogged down with fluid. Then comes stage 2, red hepatization. The name sounds weird, but it's because the lobe gets red and firm, kind of like a liver, as immune cells and red blood cells flood the area. In stage 3, gray hepatization, the red cells start to break down, which turns the tissue a grayish color. And finally, if the body's defenses are winning, you get to stage 4, resolution, where a cleanup crew of enzymes and macrophages comes in to clear out all the debris.
And this brings us to what might be the single most important takeaway from all of this. When you get a viral infection, like the flu, the virus itself is often just the opening act. It's the saboteur. It's what weakens the lung's defenses, creating the perfect chaos for a much more dangerous bacterial pneumonia to come storming in right behind it.
Back in 1919, during the big influenza pandemic, a physician summed it up with this chilling line: "Flu condemns, an additional infection executes." It's such a powerful reminder that an initial viral illness can pave the way for a much deadlier follower. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How should that change our perspective on getting just the flu?